In this video, I'm going to cover some of the concepts from yet another element of the system, which is called emotion memory. One of the central questions, returning themes of this chapter was the question that everybody is feeling or experiencing certain emotions at any given moment. And if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have been alive. So then the question becomes, what is it exactly, what is it precisely that we are experiencing? Do we always feel or experience the emotions at the time of the performance, or do we just make them appear externally? We focus on making us look as if we are experiencing or feeling those emotions. Once again, do we actually focus on experiencing, on observing our emotions as we perform? Or at times, we focus on making sure that we make ourselves look as if we are feeling something. I guess this is also true not just for music, but also for real life. And this certainly can be a question for self-evaluation. At the beginning of the chapter, there is a brief story from yet another interaction during the acting class, in which students were acting something, they were asked to repeat something again that they successfully acted in the past. However, this time around, the teacher wasn't too satisfied. He mentioned that because the students tried to replay the same emotions on a surface level, on external level, they didn't actually experience them, as they were only concerned with the results. They were only concerned with the looks. This concept of playing the result or focusing on the result, focusing on the outcome, is one of the main themes for this and the next video. Well, what does it mean? When we focus on how it felt or looked in the end, rather than focusing on what triggered those emotions, that means playing the result. I'm going to repeat that sentence one more time with a few more details to it. When we focus on how our emotions, our feelings, and expression as well, felt and looked at the end of practicing session or in the recital, as the result of all the previous work in the practice room, rather than focusing on what triggered those emotions, what should be triggering those emotions every time when we play something. It is comparable to us watching a performance of another person or on the stage or in the recording and then trying just to copy how performance sounded or looked. At that moment we focus on the outcomes, on the result, without figuring out what is the reasoning for all the groundwork behind the result. I'm going to repeat briefly the last part. If we just observe and trying to copy somebody's external movements and phrasing, then we surely will be able to make a copy out of that, and also we will sound like a copy of it, first of all. And that's going to be for a discussion in the upcoming video, actually, on copying others rather than trying to do our own version of it. But that's a perfect example of focusing on the result. We are not, at that moment, if that's all we're concerned with, we're not asking ourselves, well, what led to that kind of an outcome, to that kind of a result, to that kind of an external expression. Then he says, if we focus on the outcomes, our work on stage becomes very superficial. I'm going to repeat that with an extra detail. If we focus on the outcomes, therefore we don't prime ourselves, we don't warm up our mind, imagination, and heart, we don't put any of those parts of us to work in order to experience the emotion, then our work on stage becomes very superficial. It is artificial, not organic, not creative, because we focus on how the emotion successfully appeared in our body last time, rather than trying to bring to life fresh emotion, using the path to our creativity that we have discovered in our previous work. These ideas, this algorithm of thinking, of workflow, can be also particularly useful when you are trying to bring back to life a piece of music that you have been playing for a number of times number of months, number of years, and you've performed it multiple times, so to the point that you know everything about the piece, and it's a little bit boring to play it at this point. Trying to look not in the way how you played it last time, how it appeared on the surface level, but just looking a little bit inside, trying to think what was triggering the emotions from one section to another, what caused you to be expressive in a particular way, will help you to answer the question how to make that piece feel more fresh or different when you're going to perform it next time. Another aspect within this element of emotional memory is, and also recurring idea, is that one must play oneself. It's talking about the actors. But it's an interesting idea and it's applied not just to actors. And he used just one sentence to describe it. And he was saying that we can borrow somebody's clothes or watch or something else, but we can't take somebody else's feelings. We can't borrow emotions from another person. So therefore, we should perform from our own personality. Always play ourselves on the stage, our own emotions. Now, this is not to say that we can adjust music based on how we feel. I've talked about it in the previous videos, and potentially we'll be talking about it more. But no, this is to say that our own emotions that have to be triggered to life, brought to life based on the combinations of objects, ideas. We talked about objects before, given circumstances and other elements of the system as they are applied to the piece of music. But once again, the core idea is that after all of that conscious work, use your own emotions. Don't take somebody else's feelings. And this is also another connection to the upcoming video when he says that we must be in communication with ourselves. He says we need to look inside, observe emotions that you are experiencing, not suggestions and feedback from your teacher, friends, or family, or anybody else. Continuing on this topic of emotions and inspiration, how to be inspired, for another big chunk of the chapter he is discussing how we should lure the emotions into our creative process, workflow, similar to the way how a hunter lures in, attracts different animals or birds. He talks about decoys or stimuli later in the same chapter. Although it is translated in English as a decoy, I think he rather meant bait, when you're trying to attract somebody in, not necessarily to put them on the wrong path. So he was saying, Stanislavsky was saying that the hunter needs some kind of a whistle to attract a bird, as otherwise the bird won't come near. A similar process can be applied to our own emotions and emotion memory. Artistic feeling or artistic emotions and experiencing those can be easily scared away, especially if we try to attract it directly by forcing our emotions or over-concentrating on producing and feeling the feelings. We start to tense up and we won't get closer to the desired outcome. We don't get closer to actually experiencing the emotion, feeling the emotion. This is particularly important to keep in mind when we're playing a piece of music that doesn't entirely resonate with ourselves, when we need to force ourselves a little bit, and by forcing now, I mean we need to put extra thoughts into the ways how we're going to express that piece of music, in case if we have never experienced on an emotional level anything like it up until this point in our lives. So how can we entice our emotions out of the hiding spot? It actually becomes easier to answer those questions even with the limited number of different elements of the system that we have discovered so far. But magic if, given circumstances, sense of truth, all other products of our imagination, and things that I will be chatting in the future, all these things can provide appropriate decoys that will help us to trigger relevant to the piece of music we're working on emotions. And it is a perfect example of connecting with our subconsciousness or our inspiration through conscious means. By consciously thinking, researching, or creating and imagining all of the elements that we have discovered so far, our body, our mind, our nature, our intuition, and all of our past experiences, feelings, or emotions, body language, and so on, will be triggered to play the act, will be triggered to come alive and to produce what is needed on the emotional and expressive levels for the piece that we are going to be performing. In the next video, I will be talking about another element of the system, which is called adaptations, and that will provide an additional access point to our creative tanks and our inspiration. I hope that you will start trying these elements in your own personal artistic work and that you will start seeing the difference, the results. As Stanislavsky was saying, while we don't have control over our inspiration or subconsciousness, but if we use and apply the elements from the system, we can shift from the workflow in which our feelings are created by a chance to the algorithm that prioritizes the creation of stimuli, and then from those stimuli, from our consciously created triggers, we reach subconscious feelings and inspiration. I wish you well, happy learning, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for sticking around.